Xi Jinping gives the order, and the world holds its breath. With over 500 nuclear weapons and the largest standing army on the planet, China stands ready for conflict. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden faces the challenge of protecting the United States from a rival that could reshape the global order. How did we get here, and what happens if these two giants go to war? A conflict between China and the US could change the world forever. The global economy, worth trillions of dollars, might be thrown into chaos. Countries could be forced to choose sides, tearing apart long-standing alliances. The impact would be felt worldwide, from soaring oil prices to collapsing markets. But beyond economics, the human cost would be devastating. Families would be torn apart, and cities could be turned to rubble. The military stakes are higher than ever. China's advanced missile systems can strike targets thousands of miles away, while America's powerful Navy and Air Force stand ready to respond. The fear of nuclear war hangs over every decision, as both nations weigh the risks of escalation. With each side possessing the power to destroy the other, how close are we to the point of no return? In the face of this looming crisis, can diplomacy win out, or are we on the brink of a conflict that could change history? As the world watches, one question remains: is there still time to prevent this disaster? To understand the potential conflict between China and the United States, we need to start with some history. China and the US have a long, complicated relationship. This story began in the 20th century when the United States started to become more involved in Asia. For decades, the two countries have navigated a delicate balance between cooperation and competition. While they are both economic powerhouses, their political systems, cultural values, and global ambitions often clash. One of the major issues between China and the US is Taiwan. China sees Taiwan as a part of its territory and has always been firm about bringing it back under its control. However, Taiwan sees itself as independent and has strong ties with the United States, which supports Taiwan's autonomy. This disagreement over Taiwan has been a constant source of tension. If China were to take military action against Taiwan, the United States might intervene, potentially leading to a larger conflict. The South China Sea is another point of conflict. This sea is strategically important because many shipping routes pass through it, and it is rich in natural resources like oil and gas. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, but several other countries, including the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia, also have claims. The United States, which supports free navigation in international waters, often conducts naval operations in the area, which China views as a challenge to its sovereignty. Trade is another significant issue. Over the years, the United States and China have engaged in a trade war, imposing tariffs on each other's goods. This trade war stems from accusations that China engages in unfair trade practices, such as stealing intellectual property and subsidizing its industries to give them an advantage over foreign competitors. The trade war has affected global markets and further strained relations between the two countries. These issues, among others, create a complex web of tensions that could spark a conflict if not managed carefully. The historical context is essential to understanding why a war might break out and what each side stands to lose or gain. The military capabilities of China and the United States are crucial to understanding how a potential war could unfold. Both nations have invested heavily in their military forces, making them two of the most powerful in the world. China has the largest standing army in the world, with over 2 million active soldiers. Its military modernization efforts have focused on developing advanced missile systems, naval forces, and cyber capabilities. China's missile arsenal includes short-range, medium-range, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, giving it the ability to strike targets far beyond its borders. The People's Liberation Army Navy plan is also growing rapidly, with a focus on aircraft carriers and submarines to project power in the Pacific. In recent years, China has also developed hypersonic missiles, which can travel at speeds greater than 5 times the speed of sound. These missiles are difficult to detect and intercept, making them a significant threat to U.S. military assets. China's cyber capabilities are also a concern, as cyber attacks can disrupt communications, infrastructure, and military operations. The United States, however, maintains a technological edge in many areas. The U.S. military has a global presence with bases and allies around the world. It has a powerful navy with 11 aircraft carriers, which serve as floating air bases capable of projecting power anywhere in the world. The U.S. Air Force is equipped with advanced fighter jets, bombers, and drones, and it has the ability to conduct operations across the globe. The U.S. also has a vast network of satellites and intelligence-gathering capabilities, allowing it to monitor and respond to threats quickly. Its missile defense systems are designed to intercept and destroy incoming missiles, including those that could carry nuclear warheads. If a conflict were to occur, each side would have to consider its strengths and weaknesses. China might focus on using its missiles and naval forces to challenge U.S. dominance in the Pacific. It could attempt to block access to critical waterways or launch cyber attacks to disrupt U.S. communications and infrastructure. The United States, on the other hand, would likely use its air and naval power to protect its allies and maintain control over strategic regions. It might also focus on using its technological superiority to disable Chinese military assets through cyber operations or electronic warfare. The economic implications of a war between China and the United States would be catastrophic, not only for the two countries involved but for the entire world. As the largest economies globally, China and the U.S. are deeply interconnected with each other and with many other nations through trade and investment. A conflict would disrupt this delicate balance, leading to severe consequences. First, we need to consider the impact on global trade. China and the U.S. are major players in international trade, and a war would disrupt supply chains that span the globe. Goods that people rely on every day, from electronics to clothing, are often manufactured in China and exported to other countries, including the U.S. If a war breaks out, these supply chains could be severed, leading to shortages and increased prices for consumers. Another critical factor is the impact on financial markets. A war between China and the U.S. would create uncertainty and instability in global markets, leading to potential stock market crashes. Investors would likely pull their money out of risky markets, causing a drop in investment and economic growth. This could lead to a global recession, with job losses and economic hardship felt across the world. Both China and the U.S. would also face significant economic challenges at home. In China, the war effort would require massive resources, diverting funds away from other critical areas like healthcare and education. Sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies could further cripple China's economy, leading to shortages of essential goods and energy resources. In the United States, the cost of war would be immense. Military spending would increase, leading to higher government debt and potential cuts to domestic programs. The disruption of trade would hurt American businesses, particularly those that rely on Chinese markets for exports or Chinese components for manufacturing. The global economic order could be reshaped, with new powers emerging as leaders in the aftermath of the conflict. The diplomatic and geopolitical consequences of a war between China and the United States would be profound and far-reaching. Both nations have extensive networks of allies and partners, and a conflict would force countries worldwide to reconsider their relationships and allegiances. One of the most immediate consequences would be the involvement of regional allies. In Asia, countries like Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines have strong ties with the United States and might be drawn into the conflict. Japan and South Korea host significant U.S. military bases, and any attack on these bases would likely lead to their involvement. The Philippines, with its strategic location, could also play a crucial role in the conflict. Taiwan, as a central issue in the tensions between China and the U.S., would be at the heart of the conflict. The United States has a commitment to support Taiwan, and any Chinese attempt to take control of the island could lead to a direct military confrontation. Australia and New Zealand, as part of the Five Eyes intelligence alliance with the United States, would likely support the U.S. in the conflict. Both countries have close military and economic ties with the United States and share concerns about China's growing influence in the Pacific region. In Europe, NATO's response would be critical. The United States is a leading member of NATO, and an attack on its military assets could trigger Article 5, which states that an attack on one member is an attack on all. This could lead to NATO's involvement in the conflict, further escalating the situation. Russia's role in the conflict would be another critical factor. While Russia and China have strengthened their ties in recent years, a war could test this relationship. Russia might see an opportunity to assert its influence in Europe or Asia, while the U.S. is focused on China. Alternatively, it could remain neutral, benefiting from the disruption of its two major rivals. In Africa and Latin America, countries might face pressure to choose sides based on their economic ties and political alignments. Many African countries have strong economic relationships with China through the Belt and Road Initiative, but they also rely on Western countries for aid and investment. The geopolitical landscape could shift dramatically as a result of the conflict. New alliances might form, while existing ones could fracture under the strain of the war. The balance of power in regions like Asia, the Middle East, and Europe could change, leading to a reorganization of global politics. The United Nations and other international organizations would face immense pressure to mediate and prevent the conflict from escalating. However, the ability of these organizations to influence the outcome would be limited by the interests and power dynamics of the countries involved. The UN Security Council, for instance, could be paralyzed by the veto power held by both China and the United States, making it difficult to reach a consensus on actions to de-escalate the conflict. The humanitarian and social impact of a war between China and the United States would be devastating. The conflict would not only involve military personnel but also have severe consequences for civilians in both countries and beyond. In China, densely populated cities could become targets for military strikes, leading to a significant loss of life and widespread destruction. Urban warfare, especially in contested areas like Taiwan, could result in high civilian casualties and displacement. Millions of people might be forced to flee their homes, creating a massive refugee crisis that neighboring countries would have to manage. Humanitarian aid organizations would be stretched to their limits, attempting to provide food, shelter, and medical care to those affected. The social fabric of China could also be severely affected. The war effort would likely lead to government-imposed restrictions, such as censorship and increased surveillance, to maintain control and prevent dissent. Economic hardships resulting from sanctions and resource shortages could lead to social unrest and protests, challenging the government's authority and creating further instability. In the United States, while direct military strikes on American soil might be less likely due to its geographical location, the impact would still be profound. Military bases and strategic locations, particularly in the Pacific region, could be targeted, resulting in casualties and disruptions to military families. The psychological impact of a war with a major superpower would be significant, leading to heightened fear and anxiety among the population. The war would also have lasting social impacts, particularly on young people in both China and the United States. Generations who grow up during the conflict may be shaped by the experiences of war, leading to long-term psychological effects and influencing their perceptions of each other. This could create lasting animosities, making reconciliation and future cooperation more difficult. The potential conflict between China and the United States is a complex and alarming topic with far-reaching consequences. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for fostering dialogue and promoting peace. If you found this exploration insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of global issues. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think this scenario could be avoided, and what role should diplomacy play in shaping our future?